this meeting to. First item on the agenda is a roll call of people in attendance.
Cynthia Batty, Commissioner.
Ray Rivera,
Margot Ring.
Kristen Zumar, Mayor Stone.
Okay, and I believe we have a quorum. First item of business is the approval of the minutes. I do have a change. Where it says discussion of planning commission bylaws. It says Ms. Rain stated she is policies and procedures. I am not policies and procedures. I am developing policies and procedures for the planning commission. Did anybody else have any other corrections? Do I have a motion to approve them as corrected?
Ray Rivera, I'll motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Public comment on agenda items. Is anybody here to comment on the items before today's agenda? Okay, so I'm assuming everybody here then is either just here to listen or has something to present. Okay, that makes it easier. Okay, so no public comments. The next item of business is our planning, since I'm now policies and procedures. You have in your packet a first draft of rules of procedures for the planning commission. These were reviewed by the city solicitor, so we're at least in compliance with the law, which is a good thing. And I have one change that I discussed with him that didn't make it. On Article 4, under the meetings, it says the chair has anyway, I needed to change to say that the chair can change not only the time of the meeting, but the day. Because like, we're obviously not meeting on the fourth Monday this month. So it'll just be changed to reflect that. We wanted to make the applications to the planning commission 30 calendar days before regularly scheduled meetings. So that's on
30 calendar days? That's like 6 weeks.
as opposed
No,
to
that's not
business
business
days. I'm
days.
sorry, you're
Not
right.
business days. Yeah.
Operating business days.
I know you have,
That's fine.
yeah. Any other suggestions from?
I thought we were gonna put a cap on the maximum time we were here, like a,
There is in here. Where is
is
it?
it just within 2 hours? of the meeting?
Yes, yes.
So if it doesn't get, where is that provision?
That's D, right? D.
Okay, but D from what number?
Four.
4D, okay.
So basically we'll end in 4 hours.
In 4 hours?
2 hours. 4 hours. I'd shoot myself.
Well, it sounds like if within 2 hours, so if an hour and a half in, we get to an agenda item, we could still be on that agenda item for an hour. So we could go beyond 2 hours.
We could.
This allows that if a majority of planning commission members agree to it.
And then actually, if we're an hour and a half in and we take something new, I think there'd be a discussion of, does that person, can they complete what they need to do in half an hour? Otherwise, it's gonna have to be moved, or we're all gonna have to agree to stay.
Yeah, that seems fair. It doesn't prescribe if we decide to adjourn, would we meet again a week later to finish? Because some of the things coming before us have some level of urgency, and we don't wanna make people wait a month because an earlier agenda item took longer than expected. So can we adjourn until a time within the next 14 days to meet again or something like that?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Would that be under 4A?
Yeah, wouldn't that fall under, that's a catch-all, cause that would be a special meeting
Yeah.
requested, yeah.
Well, I
Well,
would think
a
if we have,
continuation of a meeting is a different thing. We have to give 7 days notice in any case,
yeah,
but I would say try to make a stab at getting it within 14 days, because, you know, these people here are bringing their lawyers and their architects and, you know, everybody else. So I think we need to respect that.
But would we call everything a continuation of a meeting, because most of the topics we discuss are longer than just one meeting.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I was saying, would we call everything a continuation of a meeting, because a lot of the things that we discuss go longer than just one meeting.
No,
They can be
I think we're dealing with discrete topics, even if it's related to the same water bottle. It's a discrete topic each.
I think my goal would be I'd rather run over than have to get together again and try to reschedule a meeting. But I think the goal would be to put people on notice that they don't have an hour and 45 minutes to go on and
How do we prevent
cover
that?
that.
Because you can't prevent somebody who's earlier in the agenda from,
Talking too much, yes, you can. You can say you're talking.
I'm just
too
saying,
much.
I mean,
Let's close it up.
are we gonna limit presentations and stuff? I mean,
I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, a lot of times you have to let the applicant, fill the record with the expert testimony. Even though most of your role, that type of testimony usually comes in for rezonings or comprehensive plan amendments or special exceptions where you're making a recommendation where we have lawyers that are filling the record with what they want. So it's hard to cut off an attorney from having their traffic engineer testify, on a rezoning. So that may be more of a legal question. Can we cut off applicants from, give a time limits on applicants when it's a complicated rezoning or a complex comprehensive plan amendment? I've typically not seen that done, but I understand what you're saying, that we've had some presentation go on for a long time. But I don't have many memories of applicants getting cut off.
Let me pose that to Max.
Okay.
what about, are we able, I mean, I know you do the agenda. If we know there are big, large projects coming up, are we able to space them out so that to avoid that? Or do they have to come, or do we have an obligation to put them at the very, as long as they're meeting our document timeframe?
We typically try to accommodate applicants at the next meeting if they submit on time. A lot of times there's small print that says we have so many days to review an application. That's typically in subdivision regulations, but let me check site plans. Doesn't look like you have a obligation to review a plan within X number of days of submittal. That's site plans, that's,
And this would only come into play if we had two major things come in front of us at once. And I know that there's a lot going on in the pipeline, I'd just like to be able to, give proper attention where it's needed, but not be here till 11 o'clock at night.
Well, the problem is after 2 hours, your brain starts to get kind of fuzzy
Inundated.
anyway. And it really would be a disservice to a second person who's trying to go on at that point. So. Okay.
I have a couple other suggestions for this, if
Mhm.
we're done with that. Okay, on the first, on Article 1 attendance, C. Members' failure to attend 3 consecutive meetings may constitute cause for removal. I would add 3 consecutive meetings or 4 meetings within 6 months. Because the failure of people to attend this meeting puts a lot of pressure on everybody else to absolutely be here, and that's not fair. We have a sizable commission and people just don't show up, and it's not okay. So I would recommend that we add a little kicker in there, so.
And by whose authority is this? Like, who makes that
Actually,
decision?
it's really gonna be tricky, but we've had nothing up until this point. At this, what I thought. Yeah, city council has to go through this big,
It has to be a hearing in city council, with the city council, it has to be a public hearing.
yeah, it's a
it's-
big deal. I think. Calling people and finding out why they're not here. And then just asking them if they intend to continue. Is probably at the moment the best plan of action.
I really so strongly oppose that. We're not getting voices that we expected to be here. This commission is intended for a certain number of people. We never make that number anytime. It's the same number of people all the time. We could be accused of, being the opinionated ones who make all the decisions. That's not fair either. I would really like to see something more strict. And then even if it's slightly toothless and we have to go beg their city council to do something, and maybe they will, then fine. But at least it's gotta look like this is a real commitment here. It's not.
Oh, I'm not saying that I would change that. What I'm
Okay.
saying is. The easiest way to get rid of somebody, I hate to put it in that framework, would be to ask them to resign if they don't intend to come to meetings.
Yeah.
Then we'd avoid,
All that stuff. That I agree with completely. And it's probably time to do that for some people.
I made a bunch of phone calls in November and that worked for a little bit.
Well,
Okay.
that's why I suggested 4 and 6 months, because that's the pattern that we're seeing.
Okay,
I
what
think
else?
we also need to consider whether there are excusable absences because we
Yeah,
have a person that's a.
maybe we could make it 4 non-excused absences.
Well, then you're talking,
That's probably legality about what.
yeah, what's.
Hey, I'd be
excused and
careful
what's
with
not excused.
modifiers, yeah.
Okay,
I mean, you're saying may, so, but you're saying they
Flat out.
may be relieved of their duties, so to me, that means that you'll take into consideration any type of extenuating
As
circumstances.
long as it's considered, because I think some people do have some.
excellent. Yeah, and if you're not coming, you need to notify me by 4 o'clock the day of the meeting. And
That's generous. I would say the day before.
It's a Sunday.
And then the Friday before.
that's fine, even, but so you might get sick in the middle of the day and then, something comes up.
Well-
So I'm okay with that. Okay, unless we have people. What else? Did you-
There's a comment, I think you put it in, that says,
Actually, the attorney did.
okay, looks like, okay. Planning commission wants to suggest language addressing rules of submission of written material, including written public comment.
I'm not sure we really want to get written public comments ahead of time.
Well,
But, and
again,
I think that's really more of a Chris question. Is there things in here regarding the submission of written material that,
So about like a time frame when they would have to be submitted by,
well, we got the time frame.
for written public comments though?
Oh, public comments.
I think that's what he's referring to. Like,
Well-
do we wanna put in that written public comments would have to be received by a date and time or something, or?
I think the Friday before the meeting for that.
yeah. Because that way we can see them too,
Written comments?
yeah.
If you're usually in a form of an email that gets read at the, am I correct? That's what we're talking
Council
about.
accepts thumbs up. Council accepts written comment up to the
3 p.m.
3 p.m. of the day of the meeting.
We should probably be consistent with them then.
Yeah, I would agree.
And then staff gets them and makes the council aware that public comment was received written. And they just had a policy they just made. They get a lot more than we do, but then you can decide whether you want to read the whole thing, get a 3-page letter. It's awkward to read the whole thing, but
To the high funds.
Okay. All right,
Okay, I do have a couple more things. As this is organized clearly around the Delaware Code and Municipal Code, the Municipal Code is also clear that there's a liaison between Planning and Historic Area Commission. I do always endeavor to provide short commentary, and my comments were 10 minutes the first time and 5 minutes the second time. I don't think that's very much. So on the agenda, I think you should put in a hack update. And then the other thing that concerned me about that was,
where are you?
Yeah,
I'm on Article 5, Order of Business. Sorry, I should have been more clear. And then under D, new business item 6, Planning Commission discussion where appropriate action. Is that commissioner comments or what is that? Because
Wait a minute, what are you talking about now? Here.
Article 5, D, new business item 6.
Oh, Article 5. Oh, okay.
This agenda is not particularly amenable to new ideas. And unless we create structure in this agenda for the appearance of new ideas, not that it's a workshop, if we decide we want to pursue something, we have a workshop. But there's no place on this agenda for new ideas to be presented. So I'd like to make sure we have recognition that we're all here developing our expertise and knowledge and experience, and that we get ideas and we should.
So I
be able
think
to talk
that would
about them.
fall under presentations or comments. Actually, we could,
I mean, to me, that falls under planning commission discussion.
Yeah, like.
yeah,
Like, it's just a very generalized version of it, but.
yeah, I
it's a
don't,
discussion
I don't
about
think.
topics Outside of.
That's just a plan.
And anything that, I think any new ideas or suggestions that are of any substance needs to be notified, the chair needs to be notified, it needs to be listed on the agenda ahead of time.
I don't agree with that.
I-
Because sometimes, well, it's fine, you do, but I'm telling you my opinion, and I'm
And
a
that's
commissioner
fine.
and vice chair, and I have a right to give you my opinion. My opinion is a lot of times we hear presentations in the course of a meeting that raise an idea or a thought, and we should be free to discuss that. And if we decide we want to discuss it further, we can continue it to another meeting, or we can have a special meeting. But to muzzle this commission is not in the service of the city.
Well, I'm not saying to muzzle it, what I'm saying is, any kind of presentation
Not presentation.
made
No, it's not
should be
presentation.
on the agenda ahead of time.
I get that. I'm not talking about a presentation. I'm talking about people talking about ideas. Not a
I
presentation.
think, but then that would be covered by planning commission discussion. If it's something that's gonna come up as a result of something new.
As long as that's clear to everybody and that's the intent of this, I'm okay with that.
I think my overall intent is it needs to be things that the planning commission has direct impact on. So discussions in regards to updating the comprehensive plan or that specific thing, but not something that we as a commission do not have control over things. And I know I've been somebody who's done this, gone into things where it's not in our purview. It's in council's purview or it's in another commission's purview. And I think that in order to maintain our commission and not go off on tangents, is we need to make sure we're discussing things that directly affect the presentation that pertains to planning commission responsibilities or that goes directly into our documents. That's my personal thought on that. And like I said, I've been one who has gone off on tangents in regards to things that should go to council or should go to another commission or should be heard by another commission and direct my thoughts elsewhere.
Well, we could also choose to do that as a commission. We have the right to make recommendations to city council and say, you know, we've observed this and we think that this is something the council should take up. I'm just concerned about stopping the free flow of ideas.
I would advise, you know, even if it is within your purview, as I'm suggesting that you can't get too far into a discussion if it's not an agenda item. You can have a discussion, a general discussion about something that is in your purview. And if you want to get into more detail about it, it has to be an agenda item.
Absolutely
So
agree.
the public has the opportunity to come hear what you're saying.
I absolutely agree. However, ideas don't get started in a vacuum. They live in a context, and this is our context. So we either use our context and say, okay, this is something we want to pursue, or we say we don't want to pursue it. But I don't want to be muzzled sitting here. I won't be muzzled. You can throw me out if you want.
I don't think that's what's going on here. I think and Chris made a good point was, if we come up with an idea and we know that it needs further discussion, then at the next meeting, we may have a
that's what I'm saying.
specific agenda.
That is
But go on with it. I don't think that's putting a muzzle on.
suggesting that. All I'm saying is that planning commission discussion or comment needs to be allowed to have some latitude.
And that would be the latitude.
That's fine with me.
I think that's why they kept it so broad, so that it's like discussion, so it could be you could talk about anything, but if it requires further discussion, then that's when we consider to table it and put it to the next meeting with an agenda item.
Fair
And
enough.
just as just to point out, like, these are rules of procedures, right? They are not bylaws. So I noticed that is a little
Yeah.
bit different.
Yeah, the attorney was pretty clear. He didn't want to talk violence.
Thank you, and that's what I wanted to be clear on, because I think that's very important for us to understand that these are literally procedures for us to follow. So.
For us and the public. So when it comes to like submitting things. Anything else, Cynthia?
No. We'll get another review of this before we approve it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay. Michael Dorf and Leah Justice. We have a subdivision plan?
It doesn't appear that the applicant is here. So the gentleman that was here was the buyer and not in a position to make a presentation. So, her.
That we had already previewed with them, right?
Yes,
Yeah, they had all kinds of stuff they had to get done.
Did they get the stuff done?
yes.
Then
Yeah, I think it was just, if I remember correctly, it was about getting a signature block, correct?
Yeah, it's one minor comment, but you had an application before where there wasn't an applicant here and you decided not to hear it.
I vehemently disagreed with that, and I would disagree with not hearing this now. You know what's going on. Why don't you just tell us? We've already heard this, as somebody else has pointed out several times. We listened to the same thing too many times. Let's resolve it.
Madam Chair, you want me to go ahead?
Are there any questions on this?
It's very straightforward.
Was there a reason he would need to make a presentation?
Just interest that city staff is not here to make a case for an applicant.
What do you mean, city staff?
I'm acting as city staff.
Oh,
So, you know, if I said something wrong or presented something wrong and you turned it down, or I too much flowery words into it and you approved it, but somebody was opposed to it, you know.
but we've already been through this.
Well, but we turned it down because there were
Table-
stuff that
table.
needed to.
Table it.
We didn't
Done.
turn it down. We
Oh,
tabled it.
okay, well,
And we said X and X and X and Y had to get done. Did those things get done?
Yes, they needed several variances and they went to the Board of Adjustment, per my letter. Dated May 16th to Antonina. You heard the subdivision in June, 2023. The plan was tabled pending the approval of several area variances by the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment approved the necessary variances at the December 20th, 2023 meeting. And all of the variances are appropriately described in general note 16 on the subdivision plan. There's a minor comment about signature blocks and a minor comment about how they labeled the parcels. They should be labeled lots, not parcels.
Have they
So it doesn't-
corrected that yet or no?
No, and they usually, something like, they submitted a new plan on Friday. I didn't even look at it. I don't generally look at plans that get revised in advance based on my letter. I'm sure that they did what I asked, what I
Okay.
suggested in this letter, but I didn't look at it. They haven't done it. It's very simple things to correct.
And this be approved pending those changes and those changes only.
That's, if they were here, that's what you would do. You were,
But do they need to be here to do that?
Even our bylaws say they don't have to be here.
I was gonna, what bylaws?
The ones that you just proposed.
They're not in a
I
section.
saw it
I know
was-
they're not enforced, but it says in there that they can be here or we could decide to move ahead without them.
These are procedures that have not been.
I had put in there that they had to show up. I
No,
guess he took that out.
there's a hedge, and that was what the attorney said too, so.
Um. Well, seeing as how everybody else has approved it, do I have anybody have any discussion on this? Questions? No. Do I have a motion?
A motion, to approve this, or is it approve or recommend?
approved.
Approve this, contingent upon the minor changes that need to be made. Parcels to lots and the signature, is that
First,
Your block.
signature block? As
for
long
the
as,
May 16th letter,
for the May 16th letter from AECom to Antonina Chantillo.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
discussion.
Oh, discussion, anybody? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Um. Jack Markell?
Who are you?
I'll tell you who I am. I'm Andrew Hayes with Foresight Associates, so we're the consultant for Newcastle County. Designing the project. Can you back up a little bit? I have one. Keep going, keep going. I think you're going the other way, go back.
I'm there, okay.
Yeah.
Left arrow.
Oh, that one.
Oh, there we go.
We're here. You need help, we're here. So as I said, I'm Andrew Hayes with Foresight Associates. We're the consultant for the county that's designing improvements to the trailhead. And this is pretty much the trailhead on a typical day. Get to the next slide. That's the right arrow.
That's the 273, right?
Yes, we're calling it 273 Delaware Street. So this is the Markel Trail running roughly from the train station to Battery Park. And this is the point at which it meets a multi-use trail that's coming from the west. And then there's sort of a signalized crossing here. And then there's an existing parking lot. Right now, the county has a easement agreement with the school district, with the Colonial School District. And that agreement allows them to utilize and access this portion of the property for use as a public trailhead. So it grants the public access to the trail.
Could you define trailhead? Because all these words, I don't know what they are.
Trailhead is a point where you're going to start on the trail or end on the trail. It's an access point for the trailhead itself. There would be a trailhead in Battery Park. There's a trailhead at the Wilmington Waterfront. Go to the next one. And coming in, so this black line sort of outlines the approximate area of the easement that exists. And this slide talks to some of the challenges with it. I'm gonna start over here. So with the parking, there's 39 striped spaces all here on this east end. And then there's like 29 sort of spaces. What happens is there's a series of parking
I was
blocks
gonna say, they all park over there.
that are lined up, so people see that visual cue of the parking block and use it as parking. And you can see this is really kind of typical to how people sort out. And then when we're there, if there's, say, like 4 or 6 cars, someone invariably is looking for a better spot. There's no turnaround at the end, and they sort of do this back and
All
forth,
right.
6-point turn to get back to you. All right, can you go to the next one?
Do you have a per capita count on utilization of parking in those spaces?
It's busy in the summer.
Well, no. So in terms of trail users and.
No, I don't mean that, I mean just the parking.
No. I'm saying no, in terms of trail users. The reason I say trail users is this side of the parking lot tends to get used by school staff during school days. So that's like 12 to 16 typical at that far east end where it's actually striped. But then this is also sort of a major junction between this westerly trail and the Markel Trail itself. And there's some operational sort of problems with it. One of the big problems is that folks coming this direction want to come to this crossing, or from this crossing want to go west. You can see all the dirt here where they're cutting the corner and grass can't grow and
Oh, you can't go straight.
it's kind of eroding. Yeah, there's no
Oh.
straight connection here. And then
Great.
this also is sort of a meeting place where people are launching and starting, so that you get bikes sort of sitting around off the trail. It's a little bit of a congested area. And then I just want to point out the little nub of a bus stop. Right there, it's a little dark bus stop, and there's no ADA spaces here. Next one.
Do ADA people use the trail?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah?
Yes,
That's good
you
to
can
know.
bike, you
Yeah.
can transfer yourself from a wheelchair to a bicycle.
Oh, cool, okay.
and then along the frontage, another challenge for us with the design is, as happens with right of ways, there's a conglomeration of utilities that sort of run along the front of the trail. There's a gas line and then a storm drain line that goes down the trail. So, next one. So this is an early concept. This concept was used for soliciting the request for proposals for consultants. This is the early proposal the county came up with for conceptualizing it and initializing discussions. And the basic components are to formalize parking, provide accessible parking, a turnaround for people that are coming and going from it, emergency access. And then the county is working with the Delaware Art Museum on art installations along the trail. So we are providing placeholder spaces for those art installations.
Drew, sorry to interrupt. Hi everyone, my name is Char. I'm with Newcastle County. So actually the county won an economic development and administration grant to improve this trailhead. The reason the art and all of that is a component, as well as the accessibility, is that the grant opportunity was for outdoor recreation. It was something that the EDA was offering during COVID times and trying to get money to municipalities and counties to be able to improve their outdoor recreation facilities, to give our residents a better opportunity to park, for example, there, and then get on the trailhead going toward Wilmington, vice versa. So the county did actually win the grant, And now that, this was the concept that we applied for the grant for, and now we're in the like actual design, phase, which is why we're here at your commission tonight, because we won the grant, we've now finalized the design concept, and so we're presenting it now for approval. Thank you, sorry to interrupt.
No, perfectly, thank you.
Thank you, Char. So next slide. And this is the concept that we have come up with, and this is the plan that's being advanced. I'm gonna go from left to right across it. This, you'll notice that there's now a connecting leg of the trail that gets people from this westerly leg to the crosswalk. The reason it bumps out is there's a utility pole sort of in the way right here, and then it keeps people back away from the crosswalk itself. There's what we call the bike station. So this has a bike rack for people to put a bike at while they're waiting. It has a little fix-it station, which is like an air pump, and some tools that are cabled to a post, and allows people to gather a little bit. And then up here is a little bit of a plaza area, a seating area. This would be where a kiosk would be located to talk about the trail, a little bit about the how and why and what it is and what it was. And then there's a turnaround here. The cul-de-sac has bollards, and we sized it. We met with the Goodwill Fire Company. We sized it for an ambulance. We talked with them quite a bit about how they access the trail, what size of vehicle they want to be there. And really what they said is, as long as the bollards are spaced so they can get an ATV through there, that's pretty much how they do their regular access to the trail. So we base the bollard spacing off of the trail on the dikes, which they set and go through regularly. And then if it's a big vehicle and they need a fire truck, they said they just drive over the curb. They wouldn't really come in this way. So it has a little bit of plaza in the middle, a placeholder for an art installation in the center. And then it introduces accessible spaces, an accessible route to the trail, and accessible route to the bus stop. We are keeping parking blocks along the north edge. That was a request from the school district, their maintenance staff, with their plowing regime that they do. That's what they wanted. There are 61 spaces total. For the proposed conditions, let me double check.
Is that an increase or a decrease? from
Sounds
the
like an increase.
Well, depends what you count. It's more than what's striped. It's slightly less than striped plus parking blocks now.
Oh, okay.
That's because people can park super close with the other parking.
Yeah, and it's also too narrow. So for the existing parking, we thought it only fair to count what's actually striped out there, which is 39. But when we add it all up, it's a slight decrease.
Do you have in one of your slides a comparison of that and the existing?
Yes,
Okay, I just wanted,
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around that.
we're building suspense.
Oh, wait, let's go to the bathroom. Is there a bathroom there?
No.
No, okay.
And then it has upright curb on this side to separate the vehicles from the multi-use path. I should also point out that this existing sidewalk that's directly on the edge of 273 or Delaware Street is being removed. So it takes people from walking on the edge of the roadway
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
brings them back with a landscape buffer between them and the road itself. There was only room for a little bit of a narrow landscape buffer here, but we maintain it. There's another accessible space down at this end directly adjacent to the multi-use path. And then these spaces remain somewhat similar to how they are today. I'll talk about it on another slide, but we take the entrance and sort of narrow it down. It's the big, giant, wide expanse of pavement. Next slide. So some things that we accomplished. There's a great deal of improvements for the parking and the utilities. We're able to keep all of the utilities except for the electric panel for the crosswalk in place. We're able to sort of work around all the stuff that's there right now.
Where does that the panel get moved to?
Just gets shifted out of the pathway.
Oh, just a little, okay.
like 4 feet or something.
Do you have water there too for people to drink or fill up their water bottles?
There
No,
would be no way to access water then.
Well, I'm just asking. 'cause I-
No, that's
Yeah.
fine, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking about, we have a bike rack in the city, which is the topic of a lot of frustrated conversation. Where they offer toilets, but they're vandalized all the time. They have a air pump, which almost never works, is not maintained. And there's water available. So I'm just comparing that to this and trying
is
to
it the one on Delaware
correct.
at the, with
It's,
a little,
there's a little opening so
Bump
we
out,
could
yeah.
walk into
Yeah.
Battery Park.
that goes down to the bathrooms?
There are like 30 parking places there, but people don't like to use them for security reasons as well. So there, I think there's, I'm just thinking about that related to this.
Yep.
Yeah.
With the moving of the panel,
Yeah.
that's where you actually push the button?
No,
No, okay,
that's the electric meter
okay.
that the power company comes and I
Okay.
guess reads. It's a big ugly thing sticking up out of the ground. As course, it's right where we don't want it. It's kind of like in the middle of this path and we're just gonna scooch it over out of the way. It's nothing that people interact with. I said we sized this for an ambulance in here. There's also a little bit of paving added to the edge in case the tires were slightly going outside the edge of the pavement itself. The trails, we think it's vastly improved through this connection. We're providing spaces to reduce the conflicts between the bike users and the walkers and the people waiting and the people staging and the people getting started. Sort of right now, when people get started, they're just out here in the middle of the parking lot itself. We are proposing in the landscape plan, the trees out here are either in poor condition, dead, or have sort of had their tops cut off. We're proposing some trees that are better situated for that area, and then we're pushing the bulk of the landscaping outside of the utility corridor itself.
Are the trees native that you're proposing?
With the exception of the trees closest to 273 are flowering like a Japanese cherry, like a classic Kwanzaa cherry tree. Non-invasive, but huge spring pop of that pink color. Everything else is native. So where we put shade trees on this side of it, those are all native shade trees, and the rest of the plantings are. And then we keep the bus stop and provide ADA access to it. For drainage, the drainage is going off of either end. We're adding a little catch basin here. Right now, this parking lot just kind of blows out on the 273. It's kind of strange. Next one. Some of the materials, thinking that this is an industrial track and railroad. This is a material that we're proposing for for seating and for seat walls. It's a concrete paver material, but it looks like a timber tie. So it kind of harkens back to that railroad feel, and then some Belgian block style concrete pavers. Next one. Bike rack, here's the spacing. That's actually where we measured it, down by the sailing club. And then some bollard options at the top and just a very simple hoop rack for the bikes. Next.
I just one thought on the bollards. I see you have a flower drawn on one. If you're gonna have artworks down there, maybe you want to have a simpler bollard.
Yes, that will be part of when the art installation comes together, it would need to just be kind of a simple pipe bollard. Some of them will be removable. And we'll identify the specific ones that are removable for emergency access, maintenance access, and things like that.
But you showed in the previous slide ones that were sort of decorated.
Yep.
And I mean, the other commissioners could say what they think about that, but it seems to me if you're gonna focus on art, that the bollard should not be competing with the artwork.
Yes. Okay. That we leave up to the artists. We're sort of providing this
Yeah.
blank canvas for them to.
At this point, the bollards aren't part of the art installations themselves.
Right.
I think those are examples of how they could be in the future or something like that, but we're not, and I can talk more about it later, but that's not part of the art program as of yet.
Well, all I'm saying is our program is wonderful and awesome. Don't have bollards that compete with that
Understood.
out of the blocks.
Yeah,
You know, that you can have a black bollard and it disappears,
Yep.
right?
In the entrance, so this is the existing entrance, it's this big wide thing, as wide as all the parking spaces in the aisle. We're going to pull this out, make a landscape island there at the entrance. And that landscape island coming out here, that's the sidewalk that gets removed and shifted back into the landscape. And then this allows us an opportunity to have the drainage come into the island. And we're gonna capture it in a catch basin that will run to a pipe, so this reduces the sort of flow of water that comes down on 273. Next. Coming up, these are just some of the trees that are, I mean, bless their soul, they're trying, but they're not super happy. Next one. This is some of the, oh, that's the panel we're talking about, that you were.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, lovely. Look at that work, right? So that,
Cover it up or
that's
something.
beautiful. That one let us cover it. This is gonna shift away a little bit, so that the path is actually gonna run right where that is. The signal, the crosswalk, all of that remains the same.
With the signal, is there any way to get a sign about the button? People just sit there. But
This button here,
that button there and the button down at Boulevard where Bourbon, Little League. I frequent those two roads and sometimes they just shoot right out and sometimes they just sit there and I'm like, why aren't you pushing the button? Because I've used the trail.
you mentioned the Delta, we'll pass it along, so it needs an arrow like that, so.
Well, to see the sign so little,
Yep, I do.
I don't know what they can do to make it
Just
more
make it
prominent or
bigger.
make it just
Day glows.
a little bigger, just to say, hey, push the button because that's how you can get across.
Yeah.
And sometimes people just sit there and hope somebody will stop or they shoot across.
Well,
Yeah, I
what's
agree.
worse is when they push the button and people ignore the flashing.
Well.
I think more times than not, though, they don't. My experience.
We'll pass along the message. And then there's just communication manuals. Next one. The management of there's an existing catch basin in this area. It's like the pit with a catch basin in it. Not sure why that was there. We're getting rid of it. And then we're taking the water off of the back of this cul-de-sac and we mapped out where two trees are. There's two mature trees back in there, and we're gonna snake it right in between these two trees down to the bottom. And then that's what I talked about, the catch basin on the east side. Next one. This is overlaid on an aerial photograph to give you an idea. So here, we're pulling the pavement in a little bit. This east end on the north side, we're sort of matching it. This is a little strip where we bump out, you see the little parking lot. The big dashed line, that's our limit of work. So that's the limit of the area that we're disturbing. This is that tree that we're sort of sneaking around the back of. You can see how the path lays in.
And you're gonna have the kiosk, you said? That's what
Yes.
we're-
Yep. That's gonna be up here in the plaza area. Next one. These are just, can you go two more to the landscape plan? Yeah, so in the landscape plan, these are shade trees that are introduced around the outside. This is turf. These are the cherry trees. And then lining the area between the path and the parking area is a planted strip of native grasses, some yucca, and then some small shrubs.
Is any of that gonna block the view of the parking? It's like,
So
I can just see somebody being concerned about getting back to their car and something happening, people driving by not knowing anything's happening, I guess.
this is all low stuff. We were thinking about the what is it, in code, 26 inches or something, it's an odd height or something, so we were thinking desk height-ish for this stuff. So it would kind of hide the grill and maybe the front of the cars, but it wouldn't hide people or the top of the vehicles or something like that. It wouldn't create a safety concern. In the area out here, there's just a few multi-stem shrubs. That guy right there is the only really big tree. That would be like a London plane tree or sycamore. That'd be something that would get huge. We thought if it can survive there, it would be nice in 20, 30 years if it's shading most of this plaza. Next. And that's it with that. Questions?
Is there any concern with maintaining the asphalt path with pedestrians and bikers on that same path going? I mean, not the walk, not when you go backwards, but I mean, how narrow is that path going across the front?
10 feet.
Okay.
So this is the,
It maintains 10 feet all the way to the end?
well, yeah, it maintains 10 feet right to the very, and then it scoots down. So it's the standard width of Del Dot's multi-use path that you see on the front of sites. And it's the same width as over here. This one might be 8 feet, but it's at least as wide as the trail going west.
And who will maintain the tools and the pump and things? So
Yeah,
Cynthia
that was
said
my
the other
first
one,
thought too.
Very
the
good question.
county.
So for right now, for the agreement is that the school district cuts the grass, plows the snow.
Is
And,
there any more snow here?
yeah, in theory, well, they move around the slush. And then in the future, that arrangement would be the same, but the county is responsible for maintaining the new improvements. So the kiosk and the bike station and that type of stuff. And the county has an overall agreement with Del Dot, who actually owns the land that the trail is on. It's an unusual thing about this project where this piece is Del Dot, this is the school district. The county has the maintenance responsibility for the trail and the piece on the school district property. There's 3 different sort of entities involved.
So I'm just making a note here, because we've been asked by our AECom consultant to suggest improvements. The facilities were located, something that said, these are not what we call this number. You know, because there's just, if they're not working, what, you know, who do you call? There's just no way. We need to get a communication path set up so that if, you know, bad things do happen occasionally, somebody crabs into it or it's vandalized or whatever. How do people tell somebody there's a problem? If the county's willing to come and fix it, that's awesome, but who do you call? So that would be a recommendation. We don't have to solve it here, but
Yeah, I agree with that, because a lot of people who use that aren't gonna call Newcastle City and say, what happens? I
no,
mean,
they're
we
not.
would know to call the county, but
Yeah, no, yeah.
a
'cause
lot
we're
of them
sitting
are
here.
from,
Yeah, so the
not in the area.
yeah, the crosswalk and everything is Del Dot. And then the bollard or kiosk or bike rack is something's damaged or something on that line, so it would be the county. Yeah, okay, we can do that.
But you see what I'm saying, and it's just keeping it clear for people how to report, because I doubt someone's gonna be sitting there, you know, during the busy parts of the trail usage to take questions or get stuff fixed or.
I think you're correct.
So,
But yes, absolutely, on the signage and the kiosk, we can take care of it. Unless Mark wants to hang out, there we get, yeah,
So the entrance that you're reducing down in size for that catch basin.
Yep.
That's still pretty large, that like cars can both go in and out in both directions, correct?
it is. So by narrowing it, we accomplish 2 things. One, we sort of organize everybody and kind of get them together in a smaller area. We push them slightly away from the intersection, provides just a tiny bit more room for people that are kind of coming out. It reduces the conflicts with the flow here. And it's sort of, with keeping everything in the same place, it's about the best we could do without
Yeah.
restricting. Oh, we're
And so a lot of
also
people think-
taking away some pavement over here and landscaping.
Yeah, when we have like separation day, I know that parking lot gets a lot of people parking in it, and that little strip sometimes gets a little hard to get in and out, and so I just wanna make sure that kind of accessibility is still maintained.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons it's hard to read specifically where to go, see if people kind of
Yeah.
drift over and someone thinks this person is just waiting and then they
Yeah.
kind of go around the outside.
Well, I think a lot of this will improve that issue though, because you're now gonna be able to turn, because they're trying to do that 6-point turns at the end there, and that's blocking traffic, and they're trapped there until enough cars leave that they can actually do that 6-point turn.
Yeah.
So I think this is gonna be an improvement to the overall parking in that area.
Yeah, I went here to take photographs real early in the morning in a giant pickup truck, and it was like the Austin Powers movie trying to get out there. This will be a huge improvement. Yep. Oh, and then this stub here is a stub for if the school wants to continue this sidewalk up to the school itself for the folks in the park here. And then a broad concept for phase 2 would be to hopefully have an opportunity to extend the trail down to the railroad crossing and shopping center or something like that. But that's, well,
Yeah, I think there's better line of sight too with the way that you're doing the intersection there for where they meet, like from the west, I guess, and I don't know if it's the west, but like that other entrance before it kind of like had like a sight issue, like if people were coming down the bike hill.
mhm,
So I think this will probably clear up some of that too.
I'm sure, keeping people away from each other, the pedestrians away from the cars.
But, as far as the Delaware Art Museum, information.
So, the county with the Delaware Art Museum, to put out what we call a call for artists. And so, the county originally was contemplating, I think, 5 or 7 different locations along the Jack Markell Trail for public art installations. One of the locations would be inside that roundabout. And, we have, finalists for all of the locations. Unfortunately, the grant money stayed the same, but inflation went up. And so Drew and Donna worked really hard to bring our cost of like the project down as much as they possibly could, but we probably won't be able to do all of the originally contemplated art. We would like to do one here inside the roundabout, and then likely the overpasses on the Markell Trail that have the tunnels going through them have kind of natural facades that we have an artist that would do like a mosaic there, and then we also have another artist from Wilmington who does mosaic benches and things like that. So we're trying to incorporate as much as we possibly can given the limited budget. But yes, so the Delaware Art Museum was the art consultant for the county that conducted the call to artists. This concept and vision was put out, and then artists from really all over the country were able to respond. I think 3 of the artists are local and 2 are from neighboring areas. So and I apologize, we don't have the piece here because it's not, well, the concept piece, so it's not what will actually be there, but what the artist kind of submitted as an idea was like a huge metal feather. So they were trying to use natural things with industrial materials. So we think it'll be something like
I
that.
think the picture was in the presentation.
Oh, good, okay, good,
It
good, yeah,
was a
so
big
that's not the
feather.
actual art, yeah, that's not the actual art itself, but it'll be something like that in that theme. So, yeah, so as far as that question about the art museum, they will be, we plan and hope that we can kind of achieve some economies of scale by doing whatever, like, for example, foundation work or footings that need to be put in to hold the art, we can do that along with the construction of this infrastructure here.
And I just have a question, ideally, what is the timeline for something like this, once approved, like ready to go, like, is it?
Yesterday. Yeah, we actually have an EDA deadline of June 2025. The project has to be completed and the grant has to be closed out. So we wanted to be here last month, but we were not able to get on agenda. So we are very eager and willing and ready to go as soon as possible. I think construction we thought we're hoping around 6 months. So it's not a huge amount of work. It's a lot of improvement, but luckily it's not too much work. But yeah, we have to be done by 2025, June.
It'll really take 6 months to do that?
That's what
And the
my.
construction
our
will
team
in the
told me.
winter,
Oh, well, yeah.
Around time, landscaping will have to go in when it's in season.
Yeah.
We'll tell the contractor 3 weeks, but.
Yeah.
We're planning for 6 months.
I think it would be really good to have a little story about this in the Newcastle Weekly, because it services both the city here
Yes.
and Delaware City. So, you know,
Once it's approved, I think we have to go to your council, right? We have to go to the city council. So once we approve it, we're
yeah,
happy
let
to.
people know that it's happening.
I spoke to the former mayor,
Mike.
it was like to Mike, like 2 years ago, I think, when we first won the grant. And he also mentioned that the city may still have some money to do EV charging stations. And we thought this could be a good location to install those. Obviously, people need to park their cars and could charge while they're on a hike. So, yeah, once approved, we'll definitely be happy to, share some more fun communications type.
Yeah, I think the charging stations, that's come up as a topic before for us and a lot of people interest in that, so I definitely think that would be something, like
Okay.
even if it's like 1 or 2, like something that could.
Yeah,
we could do
We'll check back with, it was such in concept at that time. I'll check back with the town manager. to see
Yeah, I know that's a
where
little
it
sometimes
goes.
challenging with electric and things.
Yeah.
So trying to figure that out, but if that.
And I don't know exactly, well, we have some electric there with the,
Yeah.
the crosswalk box, but I don't know what the capacity is for any conduit.
Yeah, so I definitely know that that's something of interest probably to some of our residents and people that visit the city. Because it's come up before, we have them at our parking lot down on 3rd Street, I think it is, and then there was another one too, there's a couple. So I forget where they all are, but I know it's something of interest that we spent time looking at before.
They seem to get used. When I go by the parking lot. They seem to be used, yeah.
Well, and the, like I said in the beginning, the point of the grant is to increase outdoor recreation as well as tourism. So the kiosks, for example, and again, we a little bit ran out of money with this, with all the inflationary stuff going on, but we wanted, and we may in the, or the county could in the future, put like digital stuff that could, not the blaring signs or anything, but stuff that could be potentially used for like, if you've all seen the 3D mapping that happens at Longwood Gardens during the holidays, I don't know if you've all seen that, you can do it on nature and it's really kind of impactful. It would be a really cool kind of special event to get more tourism, more dollars into both ends of the Jack Markell Trail, not just Wilmington, but I think the city of Newcastle, all of its restaurants and businesses could see a little boost, if we do programs to that, yeah. Great, thank you, we appreciate your questions.
Yep.
I made a list of all of our approved suggestions. Should we go through those and make sure we've captured them all?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Well, EV charging station, definitely, that would appeal to a lot of people. Improve the crosswalk button signage, which may not be exactly your purview, but it would certainly help increase safety there. Ensure maintenance of the facilities, which we believe you that they say they're going to do it, but add a number to call on the item if it's not working. And I think that's all I had. Anybody else have any other thoughts? Can we see the feather again? I didn't realize it when it went by.
Yeah, I missed it too. It was like one of the first slides.
All the way back.
Yeah, it had like a circle
Okay,
around
right,
it or
but-
something.
Like 4,
Oh, wait,
there.
go
Is
back,
that it?
yeah, go back.
One more. right
There we go, yeah, that's
Oh.
that piece of art exists, that's one of the artist's actual pieces, and that's what he submitted as an idea for, what it could be. Pretty cool, right?
It's really cool. You know, there's tons, literally, of driftwood on the river. And I've often wondered what we could do with that driftwood that might make it fun. So, you know, you might suggest that to the artist
Yes,
that he take a
definitely.
look, he or she take a look. down there.
Absolutely.
I think it's a wonderful project.
Oh.
Just driving by there, it's such an awful dump and you're thinking, coming into this pretty
Yeah.
and refined place, it's beautiful.
I was gonna open with that, but I didn't. Pretty good.
Goes in line with like, you know, improvements in sort of the gateway area, that, you know, is part of our goal as a planning commission. And our comprehensive plan, is making sure that we make improvements to that, so I think this is. I just wanted to say too, that when we were applying for the grant, we had something completely different in mind, and Kendall Summers with, and Marco Boyce with our Public Works Department. They've had this vision in the queue for a long time, not the budget, so we actually went out and got our own funding instead of, you know, kind of having to weave it into the county's budget, so we're hoping it can get done in that timeline.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's encouraging.
Thank you very much.
So what do we have
Any
to do?
action on this?
So we need to approve it.
Yeah, there was some debate internally as to whether or not this even needed to come before you as a site plan, but looking at the regulations. You have a letter of May 16th, 2024 to Antina Tantillo in front of you. Number one, reading the regulations, this does meet the definition of development. And as such, we thought that a site plan would be necessary. Whether or not it was a review, courtesy review or a formal regulatory review, there was some debate. But we decided that since it is development for the definition of the zoning ordinance, and any development that's non-residential requires a site plan that you do. I did get a follow-up email from the city attorney saying that the planning commission should take formal action on this. But there's really no regulations that apply. And I think that if you want to roll the suggestions into the motion, that, you know, that would certainly help the applicant and the city council.
So the one of those, since it's a Del Dot thing, can we include that or not?
It's not an issue.
I think it gets to the applicant, yeah.
Yeah, need to make sure that they.
Okay. So Cynthia, do you want to make a motion since you've got the number?
Sure.
I would only say that, and we can do this before city council approval. And I just, you know, Drew said it, but I just want to get it on record from the Goodwill Fire Company that they're satisfied with the plan. And I suggest that we get comments from the chief of police prior to the plans being approved by the city council.
Okay. So that should all be in the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, did it on the backside of the letter?
Yeah,
In addition to your.
got it. Yeah.
Recommendations.
All right, so I make a motion that we approve this site plan SR 273 trailhead for the Jack Markell Trail with suggestions that if it's possible to add an EV charging station, that the crosswalk button signage be improved so that users easily can understand they have to press the button to get across safely. That we understand that the maintenance of the facilities will be taken care of by the county. Is that what I heard? And the school district. However, that on all of the places where there's a point of failure, there be a phone number for users to call to report that there's a problem. That the fire company officially sign off, and that the chief of police approve the plan prior to city council approval.
I second.
All in favor?
Oh, discussion.
Oh, discussion. Any additional discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Congratulations, you
Thank
guys.
Just wanted to say too, our planning board recently went through their rules discussion, and it was just as lively as yours. Citizen boards are, you know, that's true democracy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take our responsibility seriously.
See that. Thank you. Oh, yes. I'll write it down.
Sure.
There's a lot.
Actually, you know, in the spirit of what we've been talking about for months now, of learning about different topics and getting more information on housing or the environment and different things that may inform you, even if we didn't have a comprehensive plan, review coming up. We've been talking about having Karen here, talk about the housing situation in Delaware, and the stars finally aligned, and, or planets finally aligned, and Karen's available, and
Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me to come and talk tonight about various housing states in the city council as you prepare for your 5-year update on housing solutions. And also, I want to introduce Vanessa Cullen, who is our emergency management coordinator. She is very interested in learning how emergency management policies and regulations and things that communities can do to create position themselves for disaster. So she's learning along the way. And so thank you for having. And
Thank
so
you for coming.
you're welcome. And I'm glad we could finally, Chris and I have been talking about this since I think October, I believe. So there's a lot to go over. So I'll try to just go ahead and go on through. Feel free to ask any questions. So we'll start off with a brief introduction to DSHA, roles of state and local governments in providing affordable housing, overview of the housing needs assessment, a land use analysis done by Root Policy Research, some best practices to consider for increasing affordable housing. I know that you have your existing strategies and goals in your most recent comp plan. These are, I noticed going through the most recent housing needs, you know what I mean, that it just throws, some others out there for consideration. Also, the city of Newcastle has the DDD designation, which actually has been quite successful in addressing a variety of housing needs in other designated district areas. And so I would just touch on a few things there. So for those not familiar with the Delaware State Housing Authority, we are a quasi-public agency. We report to the governor and we report to the Council on Housing. And we do that through many hats. We do this as a role as a state housing finance agency. We're a public housing authority for Kent and Sussex County. We administer vouchers and public housing sites. We're also the state's housing development administrator of the Housing Development Fund and the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program. We also administer many programs from HUD, like the Community Development Block Grant for non-entitlement jurisdictions. So in some, DSHA addresses quite a bit of the spectrum from homeownership to homelessness is one way to think about it. Okay. So what are the respective roles in providing housing? It's a kind of a tangled web there, I've learned. And one is that the state provides infrastructure and services that support land use decisions. We administer federal and state programs like that Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, the Housing Development Fund. We provide policy guidance and technical assistance, but we are limited in addressing housing needs. Fortunately, local jurisdictions, can do a lot to facilitate diverse housing types, and that's through the zoning regulations and your land use map, regulating the type, density, height, size. So it makes decisions, that can either restrict or promote different housing types that are either responsive or not responsive to housing trends. And I would say it's like, you need them both, because we actually have a lot of funding available for developing affordable housing, and we can have all the funding in the world, but if there's no place to put it that's zoned properly in areas that have access to the infrastructure and services and all that stuff, then it's just not going to happen. So it's ultimately a partnership. So just to talk about our 2023, recently, like a big fall, winter 2023, we just had a housing needs assessment. DSHA commissioned Root Policy Research to understand housing costs and housing needs. And we did this analysis based on the demographic data, housing production, housing costs. We also did extensive stakeholder interviews and focus groups. And we did a really fascinating resident survey. And I was debating about whether or not to put the slide on because there's so much to cover that I just had to cut somewhere. But I'll just say that the response to it was so substantial that it was statistically considered significant. You know what I mean? So that it was accurate. It provided a very good overview of what's going on in the state.
Can we get a data report on that, at least for our area?
Well, we have it broken out by submarkets like North Newcastle County, South Newcastle County, but that's as much as we could do it
That's okay.
for because it was a statewide analysis. And I'll be glad to forward copies of the report
That'd be
to
awesome.
Executive Summary.
Thank you.
Plus, we have a wonderful data dashboard that I was also wanting to go over, but again, we have very long.
Some of us would love to see that one day.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
I'm just writing data dashboard and the.
There's a data nerd on city council who might like to see it too, Norman Zubaka.
So Chris, how about I forward it to you and then you forward, okay, great. So here's the ones for Newcastle County. You can see North Newcastle County and the census, the county census divisions that make up it, and City of Newcastle makes up that. And then you see the South Newcastle County. And then you have it also for Northern Kent, Southern Kent, West Sussex and East Sussex. And so just talking about affordable housing, kind of getting our bearings. For housing to be considered affordable, it cannot make up, your housing costs cannot make up more than 30% of the gross household income. And when you think about housing costs, that's really the largest part of our budget. That's your utilities, your interest, your mortgage, your insurance, it's everything that goes with that. That makes up your housing costs. So if your housing costs make up more than 30%, then you're considered a house cost burden and that the housing is no longer affordable. And that starts to have other impacts because then you're not able to spend the money. It causes stresses in life. You know that you're not able to spend the money on the other things that are really important for a household to be healthy and to, have good food and, do all the other things they need to do. So to provide a reference, HUD does this every year for every county and for every entitlement jurisdiction. And they do what is called an area median income analysis. And here it's for 2 persons, just to give a reference. So in Newcastle County in 2021, a 2-person household that was earning $37,800 a year would be considered to be earning 50% of the area median income. And that would be considered, like when we think about planning terms, like you have extremely low income, moderate, and the median. So 30% is your extremely low, 50 is your low, 80 is moderate, and 100% is your median. And so more than that, 2-person household, 75,000, that's 100% of area median income. And so this is actually, it's like a 380-page study, but so what I'm doing is just talking about the very notable, findings as a result of this study. And one of the biggest thing is that there's a very high rate of cost burden in Delaware, and specifically in Newcastle County. In fact, 48% of renters in Newcastle County are cost burdened. And here you can see, for example, the average rent in Newcastle County is about $1,500, but the maximum affordable rent for that 2-person household earning 50% of the area median income would be $1,116. So that's $400 less. So that's quite a bit of a gap for them to get through. So that is one big thing, is that there is a substantial amount of cost burden, half of all renters, and then about 21% of homeowners are cost burden. And then this is very interesting. The next one is the substantial shortage of affordable units. And that's for both homeowners and renters. And what you're doing is we're looking at the affordability of for sale homes. And we know that this over time has become more and more unaffordable for Delawareans. Now, the graph shows the distribution of renters, and then it shows the distribution of the home sales and, you know, the percent that was affordable within that income range. So my eyesight is bad as I'm trying to look at this thing way up there, so I'm gonna look over here. But for example, if you look at that 30 to 50% income range, that second set of bars over, you can see that 17% of all renters in Delaware are in that income range. And so, but in that same income range, there's only 2% of homes that are affordable to say if they wanted to be someone who was a renter, because everybody always says, you know, you start off renting and then you own. And what we're seeing here is that
Can't get there from here.
you cannot get there right now. That only 20% of homes for sale in Delaware, when you add up all of those green bars up to the 120%, is that 20% were affordable to home buyers making less than 100% and 20% of the area median income. So it's not really realistic that renters can make that jump right now. So.
It was this dilemma, though, that brought on the mortgage crisis, you know, trying to make things affordable for people. And then people got way overextended, and then mortgages got sold and leveraged and everything went nuts.
I don't think it was making things affordable for people.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It was making,
Yeah, I was
making
gonna say,
Loans available, sorry.
making loans available to
Making
people who
loans
could not afford them.
Sorry, I misspoke, that's exactly what I intended to say.
Right,
but
the
that's really
mortgage
more about
regulation.
greed than, they were putting people in houses they shouldn't have been in to start with.
Agreed.
Well, and also what was happening is that the ARMs, do you remember the 5-year ARMs? And everybody was counting on the 5-year ARMs, that they were gonna be able to, you know, refinance before the next time that 5-year comes and it balloons up to that new mortgage. And then what happened actually is that when no longer, it was all based on that trickle down, but when the first time home buyer can no longer make entry to that market, all of a sudden, it just kind of set off a ripple trend where once they couldn't start buying those homes anymore, it wasn't able to be supported. And all of a sudden those 5-year ARMs people could not get them refinanced. And then when they couldn't and they ballooned, they lost their home. So
Yeah,
it kind
they
of was
were
just a
un-
risky mortgage.
Unrealistically low entry payments
Yeah,
that just set people up for failure.
yeah.
Yeah. How long have we been in this situation? Is this new or is this?
It's been gradually increasing, I would say, for the past 20 years.
So getting worse, in other words.
Oh, yeah, it's getting precariously worse. And in fact, one of the things that this study said is that, and I find this really alarming, the one where I said that the survey, the resident survey that they did was so substantial, the feedback, all the people who answered it, is that 8% of all Delawareans are currently precariously housed, meaning like they are they're either homeless or they are on the cusp of being homeless.
8%.
8%, which
That's a disaster.
when you see it, you know what I mean? I see it everywhere I go, and I believe it. People are struggling.
So that's just data for 2022 home.
Right,
It's point in
it's a
time.
snapshot in time. Mhm. And there's like a little bit of lag because you're dealing with a couple different data points to get there, which all come through. So you have to wait for the first year where they all So then this next one is housing type. And so most housing in Delaware is your single family detached home. The northern Newcastle County submarket is the most diverse housing type stock. And also when looking at the housing stock for the city of Newcastle, it is comparable to the northern Newcastle County submarket. So that is a good thing. That is a very good thing. But still, unfortunately, and for the rest of the state, most of the housing is still single family detached. And that's really important because that is the most expensive housing type that there is available. And we know that there's different types of households. And so you need diverse housing types, and they're much more expensive and they're much more responsive to housing need, and most likely to be affordable to renters. But there continues to be this predominance of single family. So,
So wait, let's step back. So does that argue for condominium or larger apartment type availability?
it argues
Is it,
for
because it
more,
it looks like it.
well, it argues for a diverse range of housing types. It definitely argues for less single family detached. It's pretty well documented across the country. That's the biggest driver for the big housing crisis we're in now. Because all of the Euclidean zoning that started in the early 20th century, where it started separating uses, and all of a sudden, you started getting into this, this is what we're doing. Is this single family detached became about by right, and then it became, neighbors became very concerned if there was anything different. And so now we're kind of stuck here. And so it's causing a lot of problems. That we really need to start moving more space in all those other areas. It's not necessarily, yes, we need more affordable rental, sure, but we also need more what we'll call missing middle as well, and more small scale cottage type houses, more smaller lot size. Like we don't need these large square footage, and you'll see why in a minute. This to me is amazing. It's very concerning to me, but I'm gonna just show next to.
So sorry, because this I think pertains to how we think about zoning here. So would that mean that we would look at zoning that would reduce lot sizes and encourage developers to make smaller individual houses?
That would be one of it. Absolutely.
Because, the other way, having, I consider myself an escapee from condominium living. But home ownership in an apartment or large, multi-resident environment is not always a happy thing. In fact, I don't know anybody who bought their condo. So I'm not sure that that's the right answer either.
They have to be well managed, and so few are.
So few are, well, the condo law is a nightmare all by itself, so,
It's a variety.
yeah.
But there's also the single family attached, like your house or duplex. Townhome type things, that are generally more affordable than single family.
Yeah, but that again, that argues for a different way to think about zoning, right?
I'm not sure how much smaller we could make the lots here, but as opposed to Hockessin where they're an acre and a half, but yeah.
Chris, do we have a minimum lot size?
Yeah, every zone has minimum lot sizes, so, to Karen's point, we're obviously in an urban setting, a relatively built-out urban environment. The last single-family detached significant subdivision that we had was Riverbend. So I wasn't even around then. So, the Euclidean zoning trend for decades to large lots, single-family detached cul-de-sacs, we really haven't seen here in the city because we're a city. But we did see it at Riverbend, but there is attached housing, there's duplexes in Riverbend, but there are some large, relatively, for the city of Newcastle, there's some relatively large lots there. But again, we haven't seen a single family detached subdivision in over a decade here You know, what we're gonna see is stuff in the DG zone. I mean, the stuff that you've seen over the last couple of years is the private sector's way of addressing the issues that Karen's talking about. We received, like I finally added it all up. We have 1,000 units in the pipeline between River Edge, the Battery, and 610 West 7th Street, which this is very early in the planning stages, doesn't have any formal approvals yet. Add it all up, there's 1,000 apartment units, you know, in the works.
What is, just really quick, what is considered a large lot in your scope? A quarter of an acre, and what do you consider a large lot?
Anything over a quarter of an acre, I think is a large lot.
Yeah,
You can do a lot of, like cottage style homes and, you know, that are.
Oh, I know, my house, there could be 2 houses on my lot. I've got a quarter.
we permit pretty small lot sizes here, so one family detached in the R1, 7,500 square feet.
So
Pretty
it's
good.
really conducive to that type of.
Yeah.
Housing.
That's great. And the next one, I just zoomed in on the city of Newcastle, looking at some of the most recent American Community Survey 5-year data. And just that you can see here that 64% of the population that consider themselves non-Hispanic white, 4%, which I was surprised, because it's different in the other places in the state, are Hispanic, and then 30% African American, and 1% Asian, and 1% other or 2 or more races. So.
Did the Hispanic surprise you because it was lower than other places? That might be because a lot of the people who are coming in from Latin America are working and congregating around industries that are not present here, so that might be part of it.
That is true.
Yeah. Do you know citizenship ratio here, or this is just race?
I did not look that up,
Okay.
but what I did find interesting, and this is true for the rest of the state, is that the homeownership rate, when you look at it by race, is still about 30 points difference between white households and Black households. And a lot of that is that generational wealth. Like, I know that I was able to buy my first house just, you know, with the help of my parents, you know, with buying the house and with all that historic redlining, with that historic, you know, that it was harder, you know, for a lot of African-American households a generation ago to get into homeownership. And that's really what helps kind of propel that next generation to, it gets easier. You know, so hopefully, you know, that's the big, is there is a disparity in this, you know, homeownership rate. And that I think has a lot to do with the generational wealth transfer, and that's something just to be very aware of.
The other part, I was discussing this with an African-American friend of mine who grew up in Philadelphia. And her mom had an opportunity to buy a house at a low rate, and her mom refused initially. It took her months to convince her. So I think part of that is that mindset of I shouldn't own a house versus a mindset of my goal is to own a house.
A little bit, there's a little wishy-washy there. Being an African American.
She told me that. I was kind of blown away by that comment, but maybe that was just limited to her mom. I don't know.
There's, you know, it dates back, as you know, from slavery.
Oh,
et cetera. So there is an inherent set. And so we can go into details, but but there's a lot.
I was curious though, with the 62% like homeownership rate, how does that compare to like the state as a whole, or like Newcastle County as a whole? Is that about average, or?
That is lower than the state homeownership rate, and I did not do that specifically for this. I just know from recent, Delaware has surprisingly, for as urban as we are, because it turns out to be your highest homeownership rates in the country are the most rural, Alabama, Mississippi. You know, those are your highest, but when you start to get into these more urbanized areas, they're not, they don't have as much high of a, homeownership rate. Delaware has always been kind of in that higher cusp of that, but we're starting to falter. My guess would be probably around 68, it's the lower ownership rate. But being in the more urban area of Newcastle County, I'm not surprised for the city of Newcastle to have a homeownership rate. I think that's good.
Is it the higher ownership rate in like Alabama because the prices are lower, or you don't have, we
We
don't?
probably less rental units and things too.
But from what I understand, it's, the prices are lower and a lot of mobile homes and things like that, that there's not as much regulation. And having a lot of family from Arkansas, I know that is.
Is there balance of homeowners versus renters that, if I was gonna answer that, didn't you? That is optimal, optimal to places.
I think that. I think actually for city of Newcastle to have a 62 homeownership rate, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's pretty good compared to other incorporated municipalities. Don't tend to have your higher, because this is where you want those diverse housing types. And you think about it, like, I know that when I first got out of my, my mom's house, the first thing I did is I lived in an apartment and I lived with roommates. And so there should be housing opportunity for that. And then, just living, you kind of jump around for different types of housing options until you land wherever you land. And so I just think it's just important to have them, the big thing is talk about balance, is we don't want to have only one type of housing option, because we just don't have a one size fits all. There has to be a variety of housing types and options for everyone.
Well, I think with Chris's comment about how many units we have coming in, that's gonna affect that percentage greatly.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
And that's my concern, is not having the balance that we should have.
Yeah.
And I know you can't give us a recommendation or anything. But it just seems like right now Newcastle City has become a hot commodity for apartment buildings, and they're not affordable housing. They are not. They're absolutely not. They are luxury, and they are marketed luxury. They bring them in here, they say luxury. So we're not, the benefit of this, I mean, I pay less for my mortgage than these rentals.
Oh, I know.
It's ridiculous, and I feel, and I have a 20-year mortgage I just got like 3 years ago, so.
Just in time.
Yeah, I did. So, I mean,
I think it's important that whatever type of housing is that, and I know a lot of housers would disagree with me, but I do think facade treatment and making livable areas, like if you're gonna put a porch, put a real porch, not a pretend porch, make it like you wanna make it a quality living space where people can actually feel like this is my home. And you want it to be attractive, and you don't want, what I see a lot in some communities is where they keep saying no, they keep saying no, they keep saying no. And then you get this mega 300+ unit rental community out in the middle of nowhere. And then all of a sudden they're like, I guess we gotta improve it. And I'm like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And it's just, you're gonna have this isolated group of people, so I think it's just a balance all along. I mean, I don't envy you, because it is just constantly, you got a lot of things to consider.
are there any studies on the changing in the demographic within cities and how it's affected, whether it's negative or positive? When the housing sways from more homeowners to more rentals?
I don't know about that, but I do know that there is a lot of housing studies about the changing demographics and about the importance of communities, whether they're incorporated or whether they're an unincorporated but more urban area, to be responsive to that demand. Because that's what makes a healthy community and a vibrant community is when, you know, that people can find housing that's, you know, suitable to their economic and their stage of life and, you know, their income and just that it's responsive to them. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to that because what I was gonna share, and I just go ahead and share this next. This household composition, when you look at this.
Wow. This is in Newcastle.
No, this
single
is city of Newcastle.
Single.
Yep,
Wow.
yep. And only 14% are couples with kids.
Yeah.
Which is what, when you look at in the 1950s and everybody came back from World War II and you started having the big baby boomer, you know, suburban building boom, it was all in response to that market demand for building houses for couples with
Starter
kids.
homes. yeah.
Starter homes, and they were making up then 40-something%. It was much more than 40% of the housing demand. And then slowly over time, it has transitioned to where now it's a single person. And then actually, all 3 counties have at least 25% of all households are comprised of one person. And one of the counties, and I cannot remember which one, is actually 1 in 3. So City of Newcastle is not alone in that.
Well, there's just a lot more single people out there than there was 50 years ago.
I also think that people don't leave their houses in Newcastle.
Well, yeah, that's.
We have a lot of
So-
retirees and their kids have left and moved out and they continue to live here.
Yeah, I think, and I'm one of those people, I'm not, my child is grown and out of the house and it's just my husband and I, and, you know, it's probably a great family house, but I'm keeping it. Like, I'm the person who's not moving out. It's just like, my house.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Well, I was really gratified to hear Chris's actual count of units, because I've been telling people that we're gonna have 2,000 more people in the city in the next 2 years, which is about right based on your calculation. And the city of Newcastle has had 5,500 people living in it for 20 years. So the change in population is gonna be massive. It's gonna make all kinds of things different. And I don't think we were anticipating that from a structural, I mean, fire, water, all that stuff. We've proved a lot of these, so that's all taken care of, but what will it do to the culture of this city?
Quality of life.
Quality of life, will it attract more people to use the amenities in the city? Is it our job to attract them? You know, what does it do? A lot of people here worry about bike paths and, you know, getting around on bikes and stuff like that. Is that even relevant? You know, I think there's a lot to think about. This is why I've been trying to keep an open mind in the planning commission about how to think about these problems, because this is very real for us.
It's 8:45, so,
You want me to scurry along?
yeah.
Okay, but I do have a it's probably a non-DSHA personal thing. I think it's really just important to be creating community. And that's a lot of our societal problems are
Yeah.
just based on that.
Absolutely.
Oh, I would agree, yeah.
So then the next thing we did, moving on to land use, is root policy research, which they are just phenomenal. After the needs assessment was complete, we asked them to do a land use analysis of by right uses, housing types in all 3 counties. And their analysis also includes estimates of how many units could be produced if there were more flexible housing regulations. And so here we have the single family detached, and then we have, and I'll talk to them later, called gentle density or missing middle housing. And they are your duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, your townhomes, and your small scale single family housing. So this to me is fascinating. And again, it's the 3 counties and city of Wilmington and city of Newark. But they're not this particular one. But where is single family detached as well as internal ADUs allowed by right? And everywhere you see this in red in Newcastle County is where you can build a single family detached home by right. And then it looked at
So that's zoning related. You're saying that this is caused
zoning
by zone. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand.
by right. And so this is where you're attached and your like your duplexes and your townhomes, where are they allowed by right? And all of a sudden it gets much, much smaller. And then.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then small, single-family homes. And they're not allowed by right anywhere in Newcastle County, and they're only allowed conditionally. And that's kind of where the rubber hits the road, because the moment the developer has to go and apply for a conditional use, that is where things become much more expensive. The timeline for the development becomes much longer, so it delays those units coming online. It also, that public hearing, it opens the door for everybody to come in and their
Not my
mother to come
neighborhood.
in and, argue, for every single reason of why that should not be allowed there. And so it's, that is why that's why we continue to have predominantly single family detached. That's one of the biggest drivers.
Karen, when you say, the prohibition on small, single family, is that a function of zoning or is that a function of the building code?
Zoning.
We don't even get in really to, if somebody said what size that unit's, too small, I would say that's really not our purview because that's a building code thing. So,
But it's related to the size of the plot of land. that
Yeah.
you're in.
yeah,
That's the problem.
Yeah, but we have a small lot.
so if we allow,
It could be much.
It doesn't include City of Newark or City of Newcastle in this
In
analysis.
escapements. would
It's
have to
just,
change
it's
all kinds of
also
different
caveat,
things.
it's from Newcastle County, what was publicly available, the GIS files on their website. It was different for each county, but each county, it was very similar along this way. And so we also looked at, if we did just a little bit of loosening of the regulations of what they would be, how much more you could produce. And it's really substantially thousands or more. And in fact, I felt kind of odd going, yeah, you could produce, but it's quite a bit. Like at a minimum, it was 5,000 additional units, just loosening up the lot sizes. Then you were looking in like the 50,000 units more. And some of the other, like if you were to really loosen them up. So I was like, I don't feel comfortable talking about this, but it's just saying like, it really it's meaningful, when those are loosened up. So then just talking about what are some things to consider. I really like this missing middle housing. And it's called missing middle because until World War II, it was there, it's been here, but now it's missing. That these housing types were in almost every residential district in every community in America up till like the 1950s. And they're designed to be compatible in scale with, your block, your single family home and a walkable block. They're really designed to be part of a neighborhood, back to that community feeling, your duplexes, your townhomes, your bungalow courts. See, the City of Newcastle, Maine, you guys have that fabric for this.
What qualifies something as a mid-rise?
Mid-rise, it
What
would be
qualifies
probably
as
like a
mid-rise?
3 to 4 story
So
building.
everything we're coming toward us.
That's what I would. I don't know if that's the official. And then it's a smaller footprint located in a walkable urban context. So it's like, it's meant to be able to put a lot of different housing types in there, but it's supposed to be more of like when you think about it, a lot of the wonderful walkable urban neighborhoods, they're actually, they're maybe 3-4 stories high at the most, but you have a nice intimate feel when you walk through it. So here's another way. And I will say that I think the accessory dwelling units is the most effective, powerful, low hanging fruit out there to provide a variety of housing types. Because one, it really does increase the housing supply without even changing your physical character of the community. It really helps provide people who, like you said, that empty nesters, and like, what if your kids come home? You know, like, do you really want to be living on top of each other? No, you want your own space, you know? Or say that for those people who are just entering the market, you know, you may be house rich, cash poor. This will be an opportunity to provide income, you know? It's.
So this would be just similar to in-law suite type of things that we're saying. I hear that that's not allowed in the city.
I don't believe that it is like an accessory apartment, certainly a second detached dwelling. We don't have the lot sizes for that. I don't believe.
Somebody in my neighborhood has a in-law suite, but my understanding is you cannot have like a kitchen in a separate, like they build on, and somehow they got around it, but my
Yeah,
understanding is you cannot have that in like, and I'm in a neighborhood, I have space for that, but I would not be able to do that.
It's a great thing to consider because it really does go far in creating increased density in a gentle way. It's like incremental density.
It also creates wealth.
Well, and it creates wealth in that the people who live in that house, you know what I mean? They may need that extra money to help pay with rent and housing expenses, also companionship, you know, 37% of the households are occupied by a single person. And also for that new person, they're not having to spend every last nickel on a totally out of control rent. You know what I mean? That they're able to have something a little bit more reasonable. There may be a trade-off for like mowing the lawn.
So the implication of attached is that we would agree to subdivide lots in some way.
It's not a subdivision, it's a lot that has a primary and a secondary.
You could rent it, but if this is actually to create purchasable housing, then there would have to be some other, and tell me how I'm wrong, because I think I see two houses there.
When she's not talking about purchasable, she's talking about creating a
It's
unit
rental,
without
okay.
Creating more affordable, but still within a desirable neighborhood walkability type of thing.
Okay,
Right, like one of them would be the primary house and then the other one would be the secondary,
like a mother-in-law.
like an accessory,
Yeah.
right? And that they both would be under control of the person who owns the home.
And those generally rent out for less than these apartments, is what she's saying, so that makes expect of it.
Kent County Levy Court had a meeting about changing the ordinances for the county back in September, and one of the arguments made for it was it allowed people to age in place. So that was a big seller here, and it passed. One of the parameters is that the ADU has to be 50% of the square footage of the main house or smaller, so there are ways to restrict or control the size of it, or.
And they're allowed on every residential lot now.
Okay, Kelly.
looks like the closest thing we have is accessory uses in the residential districts is the renting of one room to non-transit roomers or boarders. So that's an old school.
So, no Airbnb is what I think I just heard.
So you're allowed to do
We're allowed. Forest homes are permitted. I think that's the city's version of Airbnbs. That's a separate issue, but to Karen's point, I don't think, I wouldn't, I don't get involved in the day-to-day permitting, but I don't believe that the city can approve a accessory apartment, you know, which would be a dwelling within a dwelling. Kitchen and bathroom facilities.
That you can, something where a person can live entirely within that space, have their own bathroom, kitchenette.
Typically separate entrance.
Yes. So then there is inclusionary zoning. It requires developers who build residential dwellings to build a certain percentage of them to be affordable. And in return, they get incentives such as density bonuses, permit waivers, and response.
And that's something the city would offer,
Yes, but
or is it something through your housing authority?
no, usually it's the city, the local jurisdiction. Newcastle County has one, Sussex County has one. One thing I would say is that the administration of them are kind of heavy for a small city.
Yes.
I think that's what you had
We've
said.
talked about that in the past. It's a
We have no.
incentivizing it's a local jurisdiction's a way of incentivizing affordable housing. And as Karen said, the administration on keeping track of the rents and what they sell for and who's in it. I don't think the city has the administrative infrastructure to accommodate that. And those are, I've seen those typically more in larger, more, sophisticated urban environments or county environments that have dozens of staff and has a housing department.
Well, I
Maybe
agree.
we could be creative.
Then there's loosen regulations to allow diverse housing types, like reasonable lot width, size requirements of residential dwellings. Avoid minimum house size and dwelling unit sizes. That whole minimum 7,500 square foot.
Do we have a minimum?
You have minimum lot sizes.
But they're pretty small.
Yeah, you get pretty small. We never get in, I've never gotten into regulating house sizes. That's
I think it's more like you have to be so far from your neighbor, and you have to be
Yeah,
the pull back
certainly.
from the house.
yeah, we certainly, here, you regulate setbacks and lot sizes. But we've never, and I've never been in a jurisdiction that regulates minimum house size. I believe that to be discriminatory and that's a function of the building code, not zoning.
Yeah, I always think like house size, as long as it's built to safety and the community.
Yeah.
But it stays.
Yeah.
And other best practices, because I know we're tight. Ensure occupancy requirements are based on safety, not relation of how individuals. That's a whole other, discussion item, but to Chris's point, allows single room occupancies, like renting out a bedroom.
She said we do.
Include at least one zoning district for small lot, single family dwellings, allow manufactured homes meeting HUD safety standards and at least one residential dwelling. Or modular, those prefabs, man, those things are looking amazing nowadays, as long as they fit your scale. Yeah.
I always wanted one of those.
And just back to incentivize, I picked up a little off because I hated it. So I just want to talk about the DDD really quick. This is, I've been on like the planning team for this since its inception, so it's kind of near and dear to my heart. City of Newcastle has a designated district, just to give you a sense. Since 2015, 298 small projects have been completed and 64 large projects. And small projects are anything that has $25,000 more of what are called your bricks and mortar. So 35 million of state funds have leveraged over $500 million in private investment. And what I wanted to show is the vast majority of them have been for residential. And so, and it's either through rehab of an existing unit or new construction. And what is really neat, and I thought you might be interested, because a lot of what I was reading in your plan had a lot about the DDD, protecting historic resources, and just keeping the existing housing stock, code violations and things like this. So we're doing a 10-year celebration looking back over the last 10 years. And we found that we have helped preserve 111 buildings that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places throughout the state.
Wow, that's great.
Because the rebate is meant to be so easy to use with other incentives, which I'll show in a minute, that they're very easily stackable, which investors are beginning to learn. Sustaining homeownership. City of Dover, it's amazing what they have been able to do. They have had the Central Delaware Habitat for Humanity, prior NCRAL and Milford Housing Development Corporation. They have created 45 units of sustainable homeownership right in downtown Dover. And it all looks like the traditional housing stock. It looks beautiful. It's just renovating that, and that was done through the DDD program, so things to consider. And then this is an example of incentive stacking and leveraging private investment. This is what is called the Picus Building in downtown Milford. This is the total development cost, $1.3 million. And the construction cost, and this is what would be eligible for the rebate, was $886,000. So when you look at, but again, we're going into the percentage of total development cost, the rebate made up 11% of that total development cost. But the federal and state historic preservation tax credits made up 36%. And then when you look at the value of your district, and then you have other energy incentives coming online, that it, like here, it made up half of the cost of this project. You know, so I just, there's a lot that to consider, and with the DDD program, it's really just wonderful. I think it's the greatest economic development tool in the entire country. So anyway, that's it.
Can we get a copy of this?
Sure thing.
It's wonderful.
I guess Chris already has it on his laptop.
Yeah.
I'll send that study, and I'll send the dashboard. It's on our website, which that's pretty much what I was gonna do, is send a link to the executive summary and the dashboard, but also to show several studies about the changing demographics. And, just how that's reshaping our cities, and, that they say the most, the cities that are coming through them most healthfully, I guess is the word, I can't think of it, but coming through them strong are the ones that respond to those demographics and those changing, it's just different.
So one of the things I was gonna talk about is I'm also on the Historic Area Commission, and to make them listen to a tiny little report. One of the things I was gonna talk about is a presentation this Thursday at the Newcastle Historical Society at 7 o'clock, which is Preservation Delaware Historic Preservation Tax Credit Program. One of the things that we recognized in the Historic Area Commission is that people doing work and spending money on these homes don't actually know what's available to them.
Right.
And so it's been marketed. I think, though, that it's our obligation to continue to market it further. This is going to be given by Kara Briggs, who's an architectural historian with the Delaware Division of Historical and Cultural Affairs. So, you just listed a whole series of things that I didn't even know about. And I got one of those houses on which I spend a heap of money. So I would love to get some support and help on that. So
Yes.
it would really be nice. So
And if you're in the DDD, you can get a DDD rebate.
we're not quite, we're out of it by one house.
I
Gravel
would
hits.
revisit,
But
as Chris knows,
it's not, you're not responsible for that. Okay. So I did wanted to mention that in this context, that I think it's kind of important that we're not doing a good enough job telling people about all this money that's available to help.
yeah, and we work with Kara a lot. She's super, super, super busy. And all right.
Thank you for that.
This was great.
This was great, thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad. And if you have any questions, just,
We'll have a million more.
We'll
Yeah.
funnel them through Chris.
all right, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Drive.
Other hack report very quickly, we're working on a whole series of things to help educate homeowners and businesses when they come in to the city, what the, both the city municipal code and the Historic Area Commission design guidelines say. If you haven't read the city municipal code as it relates to the historic area, I recommend you do. You'd be amazed how much stuff is already covered in the municipal code. So I recommend that to your attention. We are also working on procedure for hack meetings, so I'm going to share what we do with them. So hopefully we can do things in the same way. We also want to clone what's being done to publish applications and dispositions that you're doing with the UD guys, we want to clone that for the Historic Area Commission. And put a whole lot more data out there for people to consume and understand and have a better website. To make it easier to work with Historic Area Commission and do the
Do
right
they have
thing.
their own website?
It's just in the city
in
of
the city?
Newcastle, and it's not very good. And so, we're gonna have a workshop actually, which has not been announced yet, so the timing right, but we'll have a public workshop where we're gonna go through a whole bunch of this stuff. So,
I know the city is hoping to redo the whole website next
you
year.
know, that would be nice. Websites, the forgotten children. Thank you, that's all from me.
The
Bree Rivera, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Kristen second. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much.
Meeting, thank you.